Hi, and welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we are going to be baking some bread. The progress on the house right now is that we are continuing to paint. Painting and seeing the colors together is exciting for us. I know it can get a little boring to watch just people paint all the time. The next steps for our building is we have the plumbing and the electricity are the two next steps that we need to do. We are going to hire a professional plumber to do the plumbing, and that we have planned to start in December. And then the electricity Gume is going to do. I'm also going to do a couple of projects this winter. I'm going to build a chicken coop, which I'll bring you along for. And I'm going to change my garden into a raised bed garden because I just think that's better for the environment that we have out here. But in this episode, I'm going to take you along as I make something for the first time ever. I have been making bread for many, many years, over 20 years. I was always the person who brought rolls or bread to a family potluck. And to me, I feel like bread is very easy and almost foolproof because it has just simple ingredients. It's usually some kind of liquid like milk or water, flour, and then something to leaven the bread like yeast, salt for flavoring, and maybe a little bit of sugar for feeding the yeast. And it's very simple. In fact, I find it very difficult to mess up. However, there are still some things that I've yet to make. I've not made bagels before. Take that back. I did make some bagels. I made some protein bagels. So I don't know if you've seen it across social media or the internet that people are mixing cottage cheese and flour and rolling it up and baking it into protein bagels. I've made this recipe twice. They taste very good. However, they do not save, and that might be why the recipe that I followed only made 4 bagels, because as my husband liked to point out, that when we tried to, so the second recipe of bagels, these protein bagels I made hamburger buns, and the second day we tried to have leftover hamburger meat in our protein bagels, and the bagels were a little hard, to say the least. So that might be why the recipes only make a few bagels. However, this recipe that I'm going to share with you, I make the traditional way. And bagels require boiling in water before you bake them in the oven. So this recipe was really simple. It had 30 ounces of flour, 14 ounces of water, a couple of tablespoons of some kind of sweetener. I believe I used honey, a couple teaspoons of salt, and yeast. So I mixed these all together. You mix the dough together, and like with all yeast breads, it takes a while to raise. So you mix it, you knead it until you have a nice bouncy bread, and then you let it rise, and usually let it rise until it doubles, depending if you're using active dry yeast or just dry yeast, or instant dry yeast versus just dry yeast. Instant usually rises faster. To me, they're kind of interchangeable. It just depends on how much time you have. So I mixed the dough together and I let it rise. And then I broke it up into even pieces, and I made it into the bagel shape. And they were simply rolled into a ball. And then I made a hole in the center of the bagel. And then the next step was to boil it. The recipe called for adding honey to the water. So I added honey and boiled the water, and then you boil each bagel, you flip them once, and then from there I put it in a pan. The recipe I followed called for cornmeal, which I didn't have, and I didn't realize it because it wasn't in the list of ingredients. So I just put a little bit of flour in the bottom of my parchment lined pan, and then I baked them until they were golden. Prior to baking them, mixed an egg with a little bit of water and made an egg wash, and then I sprinkled them with everyday bagel seasoning, which I later learned from my husband that he would prefer a more sweet bagel, and I prefer a more savory, so the next bagels I make, I will not put that everyday or everything bagel sprinkling on it. They turned out really good. I really like them. I like my bagels with just a little bit of butter, and they turned out really delicious. And even though my husband prefers a sweet one, he liked them too. The next thing I'm going to show you is flatbread. Now, like I said, I've made a lot of bread. I've made a lot of flatbread. I was at Trader Joe's yesterday and I saw all these commercially made flatbreads and naans. And while I like Trader Joe's, I just like homemade stuff better. So I decided today, since I was off today, that I was going to make some flatbread. We have some leftover chicken salad that I thought I would wrap and make a dinner with this flatbread. Unfortunately, because I sometimes forget to record, you will get to see the bread after it has rised. So I mixed 12 ounces of water with 20 ounces of flour. I used a couple of teaspoons of yeast, and my sweetener, dogs are running, and my sweetener to feed the yeast is honey. I also added some salt for flavoring, and then I added some olive oil. I mixed everything together. I kneaded it really well till I had a bouncy dough, and then I set it to rise. Now, come here! Now, since I had planned to go run some errands, I did not leave the dough out on the counter. I left it in the refrigerator. And that is something you can do with dough. And I mixed up the dough and then I set it to rise. Now, since I wanted to go run some errands, I put the dough in the refrigerator, which is something you can do if you don't want it to rise so quickly. Once it's risen, usually doubled in size, I divide it into equal pieces and then I roll them out very thin. You roll it out very thin and then you cook it on a hot griddle. You want it to puff up as you cook it, and then you flip it and you cook the other side, and they turn out really well. So that's it for the bread video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thank you for watching, and I thank all of you who are here every week to watch our videos and have subscribed to our channel. Guma,
Yeah.
have you ever seen a potato with legs?
No.
Let me show you.